The film opens with a haunting image, a burning horizon at dusk. The silhouettes of palm trees bend under the pressure of wind and flame. The year is 1943, and the Philippines lies under the iron rule of the Japanese Imperial Army. Villages are reduced to ash, and entire families vanish overnight. The land has become both a graveyard and a battlefield. A slow, sorrowful score plays as the camera pans over the ruins of a town once filled with laughter. From the smoke emerges a lone figure, his uniform torn, his rifle hanging loosely by his side. Ramon Aguilar, known to his men as Kumander Ulupong. 1. A man without peace. Before the war, Ramon was a school teacher, a quiet man with a deep belief in the value of words over weapons. His students admired him for his calm wisdom, his gentle discipline. He loved the rhythm of normal life, the sound of chalk, the bell ringing for recess, the laughter of children. But when war came, everything changed. The invaders arrived without warning, and words were no longer enough. His village was raided, his family scattered, and the people he once protected were dragged into forced labor. The movie wastes no time showing the brutality of occupation. Director Augusto Buenaventura uses silence and long takes to amplify the sense of despair. Soldiers march through narrow streets, and civilians bow their heads in terror. Ramon's transformation begins in these early scenes. The man who once taught children to read now teaches them to hide. The man who once held books now grips a blade. And so the myth of Kumander Ulupong, Commander Viper, begins. 2. The making of a leader. The early portion of the film is less about war and more about becoming worthy of leading others. FPJ plays Ramon with restrained emotion, quiet, deliberate, almost monk-like. He speaks only when necessary, and when he does, his words carry the weight of conviction. He forms a small band of guerrillas made up of farmers, fishermen, and former soldiers. They are not trained, but they are angry, and FPJ's character channels that anger into focus. He teaches them how to use the land to their advantage, how to disappear into the forest, how to move silently, how to make weapons from bamboo and scrap metal. In one of the film's most memorable training montages, FPJ's voice narrates, "A man who hides from fear will die twice, but a man who faces it once will live forever." It's not just a line, it's a declaration of the Filipino spirit. By the time the sequence ends, the ragtag group has become a disciplined unit. They call themselves ang mga anak ng lupa, children of the land. Their symbol? A coiled viper painted in red mud, silent, swift, and deadly. 3. The first strike. Their first mission is small but symbolic, to rescue prisoners held in a Japanese garrison outside the town of Lumban. Ramon leads the operation with surgical precision. Under moonlight, his men crawl through the grass, knives clenched in their teeth. The scene is shot in near darkness, the only light coming from torches and the pale glow of the moon. FPJ's command presence dominates the frame. He moves with the certainty of a man who understands both risk and righteousness. When the first guard falls, the sound is barely audible. Within minutes, chaos erupts, gunfire, explosions, and shouts in Japanese. By dawn, the garrison lies in ruins, and the freed captives weep with gratitude. But Ramon's eyes are cold. He looks over the bodies of his fallen men, farmers turned warriors, and realizes that victory comes at a price he may not be ready to pay. This first victory spreads like wildfire. The legend of Kumander Ulupong begins to circulate through whispers in marketplaces and radio signals caught by Allied scouts. To the oppressed, he is a hero. To the Japanese, he is a ghost that must be exorcised. 4. The woman behind the commander. The film's emotional core expands when Luz Villanueva, played by Beth Bautista, enters the story. A nurse working secretly for the resistance, Luz represents the tenderness Ramon left behind. Their first encounter is brief. She treats a wound on his arm after the raid, her hands trembling as she asks, "How long can you keep fighting like this?" Ramon replies without looking up, "As long as someone still can't." Their chemistry is quiet, yet powerful. FPJ and Bautista portray two souls burdened by duty, drawn together not by romance, but by shared grief. Their scenes together soften the film's brutal edge, grounding it in humanity. Behind the scenes, FPJ personally insisted on expanding Luz's role. In an interview from 1979, he said, "No hero fights alone. Behind every man who lifts a gun, there is someone who holds his heart steady." That sentiment shines through every scene they share. Luz becomes not only Ramon's confidant, but also his conscience, reminding him that vengeance should never consume what remains of his compassion. 5. The shadow of betrayal. But not everyone in the resistance shares Ramon's integrity. Among his men is Santos, played by veteran actor Paquito Diaz, a former constable who joined the guerrillas for survival, not loyalty. Santos secretly trades information with the Japanese in exchange for supplies and money. His betrayal starts small, a location here, a list of weapons there, but soon spirals into tragedy. The tension builds slowly. Scenes of camaraderie around campfires contrast with hidden meetings in shadowy alleys. FPJ's direction subtly weaves suspicion into the narrative, without direct confrontation, building to an inevitable explosion. One night, a supply convoy carrying food for villagers is ambushed, not by the Japanese, but by an unknown group. Ramon finds the trail of footprints leading away from the site, his own men's boots. The realization burns deeper than any wound. 6. The clash of honor. Ramon confronts Santos in the rain. The sequence is silent for nearly 30 seconds. Only the storm sound fills the screen. FPJ's restrained fury is mesmerizing. Santos pleads, claiming he did it to save his family, that he never meant for anyone to die. Ramon doesn't shout or curse. Instead, he stares into Santos' eyes and says quietly, "We all lost someone. That's why we fight, not why we sell our souls." He walks away, leaving Santos alive but disgraced. This moral restraint defines FPJ's version of heroism, not blind revenge, but principled justice. That night, the Japanese retaliate for the ambush by burning down a nearby village. The message is clear. Kumander Ulupong's defiance has consequences. Among the ashes, Ramon finds the body of a child clutching a broken wooden toy, one of the same children he once taught in his old classroom. He kneels in silence, and tears mix with rain. From that moment, something inside him changes. He vows to make every drop of blood count. 7. War tightens its grip. As the second act of the film builds, the resistance grows stronger, and so does the enemy's determination to crush it. The new Japanese commander, Colonel Tanaka, arrives, a ruthless strategist known for using psychological warfare. His methods are chilling, spreading propaganda, offering fake surrenders, and forcing captured Filipinos to fight their own countrymen. Tanaka's scenes are cold and methodical. Actor Vic Diaz portrays him with quiet menace, a man who kills not out of rage, but calculation. His first move is to cut off supplies to Ramon's mountain stronghold. Starvation becomes the guerrillas' new enemy. Luz urges Ramon to retreat, but he refuses. "If we leave now, we'll lose more than ground. We'll lose faith." This decision sets the stage for the film's darkest chapter. 8. The cinematic craft and symbolism. By the halfway point of Kumander Ulupong, the film transcends the action genre. Director Augusto Buenaventura weaves symbolism into every frame. The snake, representing both danger and cunning, mirrors Ramon's transformation from a peaceful teacher to a silent killer who strikes only when cornered. The forest becomes a metaphor for the Filipino soul, deep, untamed, impossible to conquer. The rain, recurring throughout the film, symbolizes both cleansing and sorrow. The use of natural lighting, real jungle locations, and handheld camera work gives the film a raw documentary feel. FPJ was known for insisting on authenticity. No studio-built jungles, no fake rain. The result is visceral realism, making the audience feel the exhaustion, fear, and determination of each fighter. 9. The turning point. Midway through the story, Santos, the traitor, is captured by the Japanese. Tanaka offers him a deal: betray Ramon completely, or watch his family executed. Under duress, Santos reveals the location of the guerrilla base. The next morning,
after the devastating ambush, the few surviving members of the resistance hide deep within the Cordillera Mountains. The forest, once alive with birds and laughter, now feels haunted. Mist rolls through the trees like ghosts of fallen comrades. Ramon Aguilar, Kumander Ulupong, stands alone at the edge of a cliff, looking down at the smoldering valley where his camp once stood. His men are tired, starving, and broken in spirit. Luz, pale but recovering, tries to remind him that despair is the enemy's greatest weapon. "They burned our camp, but not what it stood for," she says. "Then tell me," Ramon replies quietly, "why does it feel like we're already buried with it?" The line captures FPJ's mastery, a hero torn between vengeance and exhaustion, caught in the unbearable space between survival and surrender. The movie slows its pace here. Long silences, distant gunfire, and a sense that time itself has frozen. FPJ's stillness in these scenes is commanding. He barely moves, yet every glance and breath carries meaning. 2. The return of the viper. Weeks pass, food runs out, men begin to doubt their cause. Some want to surrender, others whisper of fleeing south. Ramon, aware that morale is fading, makes a dangerous decision: to strike back. He tells his men, "The Japanese believe we're dead. Let's keep it that way, until they're the ones buried." This marks the rebirth of Kumander Ulupong, the shift from a broken soldier into a phantom of vengeance. They no longer attack in groups. Instead, they move like shadows, small cells ambushing patrols, sabotaging supply lines, stealing weapons in the night. FPJ choreographed many of these guerrilla sequences himself. Unlike typical 70s action scenes, they were filmed with minimal dialogue, using pure motion and silence to build tension. The guerrillas paint a new symbol on trees near their targets, the coiled red snake. To the Japanese, it became a mark of death. Soldiers began to fear the jungle itself. News of Kumander Ulupong's return spreads beyond his province. Filipino communities from Ilocos to Mindanao begin to rally under his name. He becomes a legend, half man, half myth. The film uses radio broadcasts and intercepted Japanese reports to show how his legend grows. "The snake returns," says one frightened officer in a tense strategy meeting. "We cut off its head, but it still bites." This part of the film explores the psychological warfare of rebellion. The resistance doesn't just fight with guns, they fight with fear and faith. Luz becomes the voice of their movement, writing secret messages and passing coded letters to nearby villages. Her relationship with Ramon deepens, not through romance, but shared burden. In one beautiful wordless scene, she places her hand over his on a map, silently showing she'll stand by him no matter how hopeless it becomes. 4. The cost of a symbol. The more famous Kumander Ulupong becomes, the more dangerous his existence is for anyone connected to him. Colonel Tanaka, humiliated by his failure to capture Ramon, begins a campaign of terror. Villages suspected of helping the resistance are burned in community squares. Hostages are executed in public squares. The Japanese post bounties with the words, 10,000 pesos for the head of the viper. The brutality forces Ramon into a moral crisis. He begins to question whether his fame is doing more harm than good. In a quiet night scene by the campfire, Luz asks him, "When will it end?" Ramon answers, staring into the flames, "When the people stop believing I can save them, and I pray that day never comes." FPJ plays this moment not as arrogance, but pain, the agony of being turned into an icon when all he wants is peace. 5. The Ghost of Santos. The man who betrayed them, Santos, reappears. Captured by the Japanese again after outliving his usefulness, he is now a hollow figure, broken by guilt. In one chilling sequence, Tanaka tortures Santos to reveal Ramon's new hideout. But instead, Santos tells the colonel, "You can't kill what's already beneath your feet." He then bites down on a cyanide capsule, dying with a faint smile, his final redemption. When Ramon later finds Santos's body during a recon mission, there's no anger left in his eyes, only pity. He covers him with leaves and whispers, "May your soul rest where betrayal cannot reach." This small act of forgiveness deepens the film's spiritual layer. Kumander Ulupong isn't just about revenge, it's about the redemption of men who've lost their way. 6. Luz's mission. Meanwhile, Luz takes on a crucial mission to deliver a coded message to the Allied command through underground channels in Manila. The message contains vital intelligence, coordinates of Japanese munitions depots hidden in the mountains. Her journey becomes one of the film's most suspenseful segments. Disguised as a merchant's wife, she travels by foot, cart, and boat, narrowly escaping checkpoints. A tense scene unfolds when Japanese soldiers board her boat to search for contraband. Luz hides the message inside a hollow bamboo flute. One soldier lifts it to his lips, ready to blow, but at that exact moment a distant explosion distracts him. He tosses the flute aside. That single heartbeat of luck saves the rebellion. Later, when she delivers the message safely, the Allied commander tells her, "If this works, the tide of the war will change." She smiles weakly. "It's not the tide I care about, sir. It's the shore." Her courage gives the story its soul. She is the silent strength behind every victory. 7. The Viper's Trap. Ramon's next plan is bold, to lure Tanaka himself into the forest and destroy his entire command unit in one decisive strike. He gathers his men for one last stand, saying, "This is not just a battle for the land. It's for every grave we couldn't protect, every name the enemy tried to erase." The trap is set near the abandoned town of San Pablo, where ruins serve as natural cover. Using decoys and hidden explosives, Ramon's men prepare for the ambush. The sequence is a masterclass in tension. The sound design shifts between silence and the distant echo of drums. FPJ's close-ups reveal both fear and calm determination. When Tanaka's convoy enters the town, the ground itself seems to awaken. Mines explode, gunfire erupts, and the once quiet ruins become a storm of vengeance. The Japanese soldiers, disoriented and terrified, shout as they are picked off one by one. Amidst the chaos, Ramon confronts Tanaka in the ruins of a church. Their duel, sword versus bolo knife, is one of FPJ's most iconic action scenes. There's no dialogue, only the crackle of fire and clashing steel. Tanaka, gravely wounded, sneers, "You think killing me will change anything?" Ramon delivers the final line before striking. "No, but it will remind them that we never bowed." Tanaka collapses, and for the first time, silence returns to the town. 8. Between victory and void. The resistance celebrates, but Ramon does not. Standing among the corpses, he feels no triumph. Luz returns, exhausted but alive, bringing word that Allied forces are advancing. The war's end is near. Yet instead of relief, Ramon feels emptiness. He has lived too long as a shadow, too long as a weapon. What does peace mean for a man who has only known war? Luz senses his torment. She tells him softly, "When this is over, promise me you'll come back to the classroom." He smiles faintly, if the children still remember what peace looks like. It's a heartbreaking exchange, one that reflects FPJ's deep empathy for the common man. 9. Historical and production notes. Behind the camera, Kumander Ulupong was one of the most ambitious war dramas of the late 1970s. FPJ produced it under his own company, FPJ Productions, pouring much of his personal funds into real locations and authentic props. Filming took place across Cavite, Laguna, and parts of Batangas, where actual remnants of World War II bunkers were used. FPJ insisted on performing many of his own stunts, including the explosive ambush scene, without a stunt doubler. Over 300 extras were hired from local communities, many.
When the last echoes of gunfire fade across the mountains, what remains is not silence, but the uneasy heartbeat of a country that has survived. The war is ending. The Japanese forces have begun to retreat, their banners torn, their lines broken, their morale drained by the endless guerrilla resistance. But for men like Ramon Aguilar, Kumander Ulupong, victory feels almost meaningless. It is not a triumph of joy, but a quiet release after years of agony. The film opens this final chapter with a shot of dawn breaking over the valley of San Pablo. Smoke drifts from distant ruins. Birds return to trees that were once filled with gunfire. FPJ stands alone, his bolo knife sheathed, his uniform ragged, but his gaze unwavering. He is not smiling, and yet in his stillness there is peace. The war is over, but peace has a cost. He and Luz walk through the remnants of their camp, broken rifles, burned maps, graves marked with wooden sticks. Their comrades are gone. The sound of the wind through the trees replaces the cries of battle. Ramon kneels before a makeshift cross, one of hundreds that dot the clearing. It bears no name, just a helmet hanging from the wood. He bows his head in silence. It's a scene that lasts only seconds on screen, but it feels eternal. As days pass, the once feared guerrilla commander becomes a wanderer again. With the liberation forces arriving, the Japanese occupation ends, but so too does the purpose that had kept him alive. The men who fought beside him begin to disband. Some return to their villages, others join the rebuilding efforts. Ramon refuses any government post or medal. He does not want recognition. He only wants normalcy. The movie transitions from the jungle to the town, the first time we see civilization in daylight. Streets are filled with laughter, flags waving, people cheering the return of peace. But in FPJ's eyes, there is an unmistakable distance. He walks among them as if through a dream. He visits the ruins of the school where he once taught before the war. Inside, only the blackboard remains. On it, faintly visible through soot and dust, are the words, "Freedom is the lesson that costs the most." That line encapsulates the movie's message. For FPJ, playing Kumander Ulupong
was never about showing brute strength or military glory. It was about showing the human cost of independence, the emotional exhaustion that lingers after the last bullet is fired. A few weeks later, word reaches Ramon that the Allied commanders have named him a hero of the resistance. They offer him a medal and a pension. He declines. In a simple yet powerful moment, he tells Luz that the medal should go to those who cannot receive it, the people who fought and died without ever being known. The film subtly explores the post-war trauma that grips men like Ramon. He dreams of the ambushes, of Santos's death, of the burning villages. In his sleep, he sees the faces of the fallen, not as enemies or allies, but as fellow souls caught in the machinery of war. Luz, ever his quiet strength, convinces him to stay in town. Together, they rebuild the school, turning it into a place of learning once again. Children return. Books are opened. For the first time in years, Ramon smiles. He begins teaching again, not about arithmetic or history, but about dignity, courage, and the meaning of freedom. There is a beautiful montage, one that FPJ personally helped edit, showing Ramon writing on the board, while outside, construction workers rebuild homes. The town comes alive in harmony. It's a metaphor for the Philippines itself, scarred but unbroken. The final act of the movie takes a philosophical turn. As peace settles, corruption slowly creeps back. Local politicians who collaborated with the enemy return to power, and old wounds resurface. Ramon finds himself once again confronted by injustice, not from foreign invaders this time, but from within. He resists the temptation to fight again. Instead, he chooses a different kind of battle, to inspire through example. When a local thug beats a farmer for refusing to give bribes, Ramon intervenes not with weapons, but with words. His moral authority becomes his greatest strength. It's here that Kumander Ulupong transcends war drama. It becomes a moral reflection on the nature of power. FPJ, through Ramon, embodies the ideal Filipino hero, strong but humble, fierce but compassionate, capable of violence but devoted to peace. Behind the scenes, this transformation mirrored FPJ himself. By 1978, he was already a towering figure in Philippine cinema, a symbol of justice for the poor and protector of the weak. But in this role, he moved beyond action stardom. He became a storyteller of conscience. Film historians later said that Kumander Ulupong marked the point when FPJ's image matured from a fighter into a fatherly protector, a man who no longer sought revenge, but understanding. Production-wise, the closing scenes were among the most emotionally demanding. The crew filmed in actual post-war ruins around Cavite and Tagaytay, many of which still bore bullet marks from the real conflict. FPJ insisted that no artificial sets be built for these sequences, saying authenticity mattered more than polish. Director Augusto Buenaventura reportedly shot the final montage with real villagers who had lived through the Japanese occupation. Their tears, seen during the liberation celebration scene, were genuine. Many of them thanked FPJ after filming, saying that he had given them the chance to release emotions they had carried for decades. That emotional truth is what gives Kumander Ulupong its timeless power. In the film's closing minutes, Ramon stands at the edge of a rice field at sunrise. The sound of birds fills the air. Luz stands beside him. The farmers, once soldiers, now plant seedlings in muddy rows. The camera pans slowly upward, capturing the landscape bathed in gold. Ramon's voice is heard in a calm, reflective tone, a final narration delivered with deep gravity by FPJ himself. We fought not because we loved war, but because we loved the peace it promised. And when that peace came, we realized it must be guarded every day, not with bullets, but with kindness, honesty, and courage. As his words fade, the screen shows the Philippine flag unfurling in slow motion. The film ends with the same musical motif that began it, the haunting blend of bamboo flutes and brass drums, symbolizing both grief and triumph. It's a perfect ending, quiet, patriotic, and profoundly human. When Kumander Ulupong premiered nationwide, critics and audiences were moved to tears. For many, it was not just a movie, it was a reminder of what their parents and grandparents had endured during the war. The film became a national event, shown in both urban cinemas and small-town theaters. Newspaper headlines praised FPJ for portraying not just a hero, but an entire generation. Reviewers called it a mirror of the Filipino spirit. The film broke records at the box office for war dramas that year, surpassing even imported titles. Internationally, it was screened at cultural festivals in Japan and the United States. In Japan, critics were surprised by the film's balanced tone. It did not portray the Japanese as pure evil, but as human beings trapped in a system of cruelty. FPJ's insistence on showing compassion even for his enemies was widely respected. The movie received several Thamas nominations and won awards for Best Actor, Best Sound, and Best Director. It was also recognized for its cinematography, particularly the ambush sequence and the final sunrise shot, which later became one of the most referenced images in Philippine war cinema. Over time, Kumander Ulupong evolved into more than just a film. It became a legend passed down through generations. In the 1980s and 1990s, TV reruns introduced it to younger audiences. FPJ's iconic image, machete in hand, became a cultural symbol of courage and sacrifice. Teachers used scenes from the movie in lessons about patriotism. Even decades later, his portrayal of Ramon Aguilar remained the benchmark for war heroes on screen. What made FPJ's performance unforgettable was his restraint. He never glorified violence. He fought when necessary, but always with sorrow in his eyes. In every frame, he carried the weight of history,